A recent study showed that 1 in 3 people suffer from loneliness. During these times, a lot of people feel that they don't have anyone they can turn to, that they're alone and they're by themselves. Today, we talk about the struggles with loneliness and how to overcome right after this. What is mindset? Our mindset is based on what we believe, and anything we believe in, we put into motion. I have spent my life putting the mindset of perseverance into motion, and now I am here today to share my journey along with others whose mindsets have changed the course of their lives. Hi, I'm Mindset Coach Lorraine Lindsey, and I believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. So are you ready? Welcome back to another episode of The Mindsetters, where we believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. I am your host, certified life coach Lorraine Lindsey, and I'm here today to talk about loneliness. But before we get into the show, please do not forget to hit the subscription button. Let us hear from you. Give us a thumbs up and send us content if you want us to discuss specific topics. We love to hear from you. Today, we are going to be talking about loneliness, as I said. And before we get into it, let me introduce the fabulous Lipstick Ladies, who we will be launching a separate show in the new year. So be on the lookout for the Lipstick Ladies, and it's going to be so much fun. A little bit more lighthearted, but talking about stuff that women talk about. But my reoccurring co-host, we've got Miss Carmen Smith, a local realtor here in Las Vegas and an entrepreneur. She has a line called Gia Carol on Etsy, which is a skincare line. So if you're looking for real estate and or a fabulous face or both, contact Carmen Smith _realtor. The next fabulous lady, Miss Sharlene Ruiz. Sharlene is a local lender here in the Las Vegas Valley. She is also a coach, a fitness coach for Your Time to Be Fit coaching. So if you are looking to get a loan and be fit while getting one, get in contact
That's good.
with Miss Sharlene Ruiz, y'all. So ladies, I'm excited, first of all, for the upcoming new podcasts, the Lipstick Ladies. I think that it's time that we spin off and do something that represents each one of us in some facet. You know, we all represent a different storyline, but also a lot of similarities. Yes. And I think it'll be a fun segment for us to just kind of talk to a different audience and some of the same. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be taking place in January. So please be on the lookout. More to come on that. But today, I was thinking about topics. I'm always trying to think about what would be good to talk about when it comes to mindset. And this is the holiday season. You know, we're in November, the end of November, going into December. And this is a time when a lot of people deal with loneliness, especially because you've got family and friends that gather for the holidays. And some people just don't have that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about loneliness and what that looks like in different ways and how we can actually overcome it. And I think that no matter who we are and who we have in our lives, we've all experienced it at some point in time for different reasons. So let's get right into this loneliness thing. So what is loneliness? So loneliness is a feeling of unwanted isolation or a lack of connection, whether you are alone or surrounded by others. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice. People may choose to be alone for hours or days and not feel lonely at all. So this is something I also wanted to say, because there is a difference between being lonely, feeling lonely, and being alone. So do you all want to kind of like tap into that right out the gate about loneliness and alone?
I've felt lonely in relationships that were not healthy, or even like in my marriage, there was times I felt lonely. Probably more so than when I was actually alone, because you're longing for that, companionship or whatever your need is. You're wanting that. I for now in my life, I tend to value more of my alone time, and I don't feel lonely. So.
Yeah.
I agree with you. You can be in a full room and still feel lonely or alone. Well, even I guess you could feel like you're alone in a room full of people, as if you stand by yourself in a corner, but really you're in the middle of it all. And I think that's an internal thing, which probably taps into loneliness, right? I think they all come full circle, but there are specifics to that. I enjoy being alone too, when I'm at peace. You know, when there's unresolved issues, sometimes I don't want to be alone. I want to resolve that problem.
Yeah.
Let's go handle that. So it just really depends too.
And I think that too, like for me, I definitely am someone who really embraces being alone. It's something that I need for recharge. So it is different distinctively when I'm alone and it's a choice that I'm making to be alone versus
Yes.
when I'm alone and it's not a choice that I'm making. And I
Sure.
feel that loneliness. And like you said, and loneliness doesn't necessarily equate to solitude. It could be a room full. There has been many times in my life where I'm in a room full of people and I feel very much alone because I just don't relate to the people that's in that space, or I don't feel comfortable, or there's nothing familiar about it. So you kind of feel like almost uncomfortable.
Do you think it goes with being insecure, being lonely in a room full of people?
I think it depends like on why I'm feeling the loneliness. Sometimes the loneliness comes from missing something or someone. And there's an insecurity in that, saying I had this thing that made me feel connected and I no longer have it. And the insecurity of, will I always be in this space of never having that again? So I think that can create insecurities, you know, especially as we get older, it gets harder in our minds. It may be, and maybe in the reality of things too, to find certain types of connections and things like that. So I want to go into this bullet point, and it kind of breaks down some of the loneliness of what we are feeling when we're feeling lonely versus just being alone. And one of that is lack of companionship, a feeling of being left out, a feeling of in tune with other people around you, which we kind of touched on that already. The feeling of not really wanting to be outgoing or friendly. And then the feeling, you're feeling that there are people that you can't turn to. So, you know, for me, when I thought about this topic today, it made me feel really sad because I hate to feel that people are out there alone. But yet, like I was reading and kind of researching this morning and saying, wow, 1 in 3 people feel alone. And it's really, really sad because it's like, how do you combat that when some of our like feeling of loneliness comes from pain and isolation? So I feel alone, I feel lonely, but I've been hurt so much that I'm even afraid to put myself back out there.
Yeah. No, I think that's it too. I think when we have a desire to share something that we're going through and we don't, we make ourselves feel alone, right? We could be in a room full of people we love and we want to tell them something that we're feeling so badly, but we don't. And we make ourselves feel alone. Whatever the circumstances, I think we also do that, to your point, not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, or the fear of letting it out and then being hurt. So I'd rather be lonely than get hurt, even though both create pain or suffering in some sort.
Right.
So that's interesting. Yeah.
So the first one, there was 3 bullet points. We'll reference the article, but it's psychology that Carmen had found, and it describes some types of loneliness. So let's talk about the first one, which is the existential loneliness. And it says, from an existential perspective, a little bit of existential loneliness is good for the soul, and it's definitely an inevitable part of the human experience. However, loneliness tends to stir up negative feelings, and while those can be helpful in terms of self-exploration, they are also something to which we are adverse and want to avoid as much as we can. So I think this is interesting because I do truly believe that to be alone, like this existential loneliness that they're referencing, is really essential. And it can be incredibly uncomfortable. So if you're out there listening and you're like, I have this loneliness, but I'm not comfortable with it because of what comes up, because a lot of people need to be surrounded constantly, keep their minds very busy, because the loneliness brings things up that they're not comfortable with. And so this is where I feel like that being alone is essential, where you can say, okay, am I feeling lonely because isolating myself or giving myself some form of solitude causes me to think about things I don't want to think about? And do I need to embrace this a little bit and let that kind of stuff come up so I can see, like they said, self-exploration, so I can see what it is that I actually need to deal with?
Yeah, I used to struggle with that a lot, like that quiet time by myself or being alone, because I always had kids at home. I had my ex-husband. I always had family around me. So I didn't have a lot of just me alone time. And I think the first time I can experience that feeling of loneliness where I had to deal with myself was through COVID and just being shut down. I was always on the go, on the go. I would leave. I wouldn't even be at home because I didn't like the downtime. I didn't like where my thoughts would go. And it's a very uncomfortable space to see yourself. But now I kind of put myself in those spaces to have my alone time where I'll just kind of shut down from everybody for a few days and just deal with my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a recharge,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for me. So I tend to embrace those moments now versus before. They were very, very uncomfortable. And I don't know, that's my little self-therapy too.
No, but that's a good point
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of people, especially when your life is transitioning and changing,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, I had a household full of people. I had children. I had a husband. There was always a constant noise and chaos, whether it be good or bad. And sometimes when your life transitions and that changes, whether you lost someone, you know, through death or divorce, or your kids are getting older and now you're in a space by yourself, it can feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel lonely, but it's about that mind shift of saying, okay, this is my new situation. I am feeling lonely, but let me sit in this and see what comes up as to why I'm equating it to
Yep.
loneliness as to just saying, okay, I'm alone now. What am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
Because there's a different way to look at it depending. Do you feel like you've ever
Well,
related
the first
to that?
thing that comes to my mind is the way to get through it is to go through it, right? So we
Right.
have to actually feel what it is that we're feeling. And to your point, I mean, I don't have a lot of family here. I didn't. My husband did. So I remember during the holidays earlier in our relationship, I was a little lonely from my family, even though I had all his family there. There was that, you know, it was something I was missing, so I hung on to that a little bit, and then I had to tell myself something different and own that in order to move past that. Because in essence, it doesn't matter if it's my family, his family, whoever, I create that in me. But it was a thing I didn't understand. Like, why do I feel this melancholy around the holidays? Like, it just came. Now it's like, I used to call it the winter blues. Now it's like, okay, bring it. Let me do something else around this time of the year to create new memories that fulfill me, so I don't feel that loneliness or emptiness or whatever it is that we feel through during those times.
Yeah.
I think too, we have to be careful when we get into that space because it can easily turn into depression.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. That's a big problem with loneliness, is that it causes depression. They talk about this a lot. And then what also happens is if you're not careful, your loneliness becomes your companion. And you get to a point where you really shut down and really go into isolation and you shut yourself out from everybody because you just become like, I'm just a lonely person. I'm alone. Nobody wants to be around me. You start to create these mantras and that loneliness becomes your unhealthy companion. So let's go to the next type of loneliness. This is emotional loneliness. This type of loneliness arises from a feeling that you lack relationship or attachment. You might experience emotional loneliness when everyone but you has a romantic partner in your group. Emotional loneliness can be felt when you need someone to talk about something you're going through in your life, but feel that there is no one available to contact. If your heart has been broken, you might feel lonely for the person who has moved out of your life. You might be lonely for a close friend, a parent, a sibling, and so on. So emotional loneliness is a lot to do with your attachment. And by nature, us as human beings, community is important for us. We are tribal by nature. And when we feel that we have a loss for something or we didn't have something, and especially in this day and age where we have social media, and where you're watching people live out their lives, whether it's a facade or not, and you're constantly scrolling and looking and you're like, I don't have these things. I don't have that meal to share with, or those people laughing with me, or the comments that they're getting, or all the likes. And it can make you feel really lonely. I know for me, as much as I love being alone, when my heart is broken and I'm really missing someone, it is such a lonely feeling. And it isn't about everybody else. Like, everyone could be there to support me. Everyone could come around me and love on me and be a support system. But when I'm missing and yearning, that it's a loss. That is it's a very hard loneliness for me to overcome. And I had in the past do a lot of work and really dig deep as to why that is so crippling for me when I'm going through that.
It's almost like a mourning too. You know, we go through losses and we feel the feeling of, I mean, loss. I guess loss and loneliness do kind of marry each other in that regard. But yeah, it's emptiness. It's a disconnect, an uncertainty, a new that creates, and it's not a light new, it's a heavy new. So like you said, it can fall into that depression feeling. But again, it's a matter of the mind in time as you go through it, changing that.
I remember when my grandmother passed away and she lived with me we lived together for 8 years. So she was part of my world every day. And even though she was older than me, or even though I took care of everything, she still was like the matriarch in my home, like that was my grandma. Mm-hmm. So when she passed away, it was like, who do I have, like to give me advice, even just how I look in the morning, because I would walk in, she'll say, oh, let me see how you look,
Aww.
And I could walk out confident because I know I look good. And even now I'm in the mirror like, Grandma? I need somebody to tell me how I look. But I remember laying on the couch after everything kind of settled down, and I just got so lonely and depressed, and I was like, how do I get myself out of this? Because it almost scared me. Like I could see how people fall into this like slump that would be hard to get out of, and I just had to make an intentional decision to get up. And I said, I'm not going to do this to myself. Death is part of life. It's going to happen to everybody, and just look at it rationally. So loss, whether it's relationship or somebody you love dies, like you have to really be intentional in your mind of how you're going to handle it. I tend to get over things a little quickly, but I go through a lot while I'm going through it. So I can get over heartbreak pretty quickly. And I don't know if that's just a defense mechanism.
I think it's more a defense mechanism.
But like, I'm
because
so
we
scared
do
to fall
that
into
when we're
that.
afraid, and like we'll
I'm
stuff.
afraid to fall into
we'll
that.
stuff, right? And so when she says I get over things quickly, well, we think we do, but we do have to go through a process when we're dealing with, and this is kind of a sidebar, of course, but when you're dealing with a loss of any sort, whether it's a relationship or someone has passed, I don't think you actually get over them quickly.
I think I do, especially
I think
heartache.
you tell
Not death,
yourself.
not death,
I
not
think
death,
you tell yourself, but then
I
I think you stuff it, and then it shows up other ways.
don't know. I have my own process that I go through.
Yeah, I know. But we do need to go through it, and it takes time, more time than you think. But that's another conversation. All right, so I want to go to the next type of emotional thing, and then that way we can get into the actual help with this. So social loneliness. This type of loneliness occurs when you don't feel a sense of belonging to a group beyond yourself. You might even feel social loneliness even when you're in a romantic relationship with a partner you treasure. If you don't have a wider circle of social support, you may feel that you and your partner don't have a group with whom you belong. When you walk into a party and don't recognize anyone familiar, a feeling of social loneliness may wash over you if you don't typically feel comfortable approaching new people. If you don't feel that your presence is valued in a wider circle, you might experience social loneliness. And I think this is a big one, especially because, and we hear this all about extroverted people and introverted people. I think particularly for people who are, and this is for lack of a better word, but socially awkward, where they have a hard time maybe interacting or approaching people or being around new people because they're a little bit more quiet or they're a little bit more introverted. This could create social awkwardness social loneliness just for the simple fact is it's just not your thing. And sometimes we feel an obligation to be in social environments. Like sometimes when people are alone, it doesn't mean they're lonely. And other people will watch it and interpret it as like they feel bad for this person or they feel sorry from, oh my gosh, they look so alone, and they could be completely content. And some people who are content with being by themselves and they're really in a good space with that, sometimes they feel forced or obligated to be in bigger social environments because everybody's questioning their loneliness. I mean, how many times have you been in a restaurant and you see an elderly person or a person in general sitting at a table by themselves, and the first thing people look at and like, oh, how sad. How like they're pathetic. I personally love sometimes when I just need to shut down, I will go to a restaurant and I love to sit by myself, kind of like put my phone off to the side and just kind of like people watch a little bit or kind of see what comes up or just kind of like be the self. And I'm rambling, but
it's true.
It's sometimes this social loneliness comes from us being forced into in social environments that we're not comfortable with, right? That's part of it.
And when you understand yourself and what fuels you, you'll know what works best for you too. Because not everybody recharges the same way. You know, we all have our thing, and some people need to have other people around them to feel like they're valued and loved and worth. And you know, some people don't need anybody around. They just need to be by themselves to remind themselves how much they love themselves, right? So I think that's subjective too, to our own experiences. But you're right, there is no one way. But loneliness is a universal thing, regardless of if you're with someone or not, or in a room full of people, or alone, or even in a marriage. To your point, I mean, I've had plenty of times where I felt lonely in my marriage too, because you do. I mean, you commit to someone for companionship, and then when there is a gap, or there's missing time, or you need something and they're not giving, well, I feel lonely now. But that's a whole nother thing on communicating and all that stuff. But
that also comes with time. Like when you're with someone for an extended period of time, especially when you started off like you in a relationship when you're super, super young, you're going to transition as a human being. You're going to evolve as a self. And if sometimes you and your partner are evolving in different directions, that could create loneliness. Or again, I'm going to circle back to the having kids in the home, and then your partner and you have always been the parents, and your relationship was around that. And now your kids are leaving. Now you have to figure out how to have a relationship, and that could feel lonely because it's changing, you know. But to the social loneliness, also being in environments, like you said, you could have you and your partner, and you are the nucleus to your life. The two of you are like inseparable. And you just have your thing, right? And then like the holidays. Now you have to go be around their family or your family or both families. And you all are just the uniqueness to your family. You're not like the rest of them. And that could feel like lonely, like they don't get me. They don't understand me. As soon as I open my mouth and speak, they're looking at me like I'm crazy. Work environments can be like that.
I was going to say, like we were talking the other day about like one of my insecurities is I don't feel like I fit in certain places. And when I feel that, I feel so like alone and withdrawn. And it's in my head, you know, but it's something that I don't know how to work through yet, or I haven't figured it out. But those situations make me feel really lonely. Or even, you know, I was heavy as a child. So in my head, sometimes I still feel like I'm a bigger girl. And especially like when I was at your house the other day, Lorraine's tiny, her friend's tiny. And they're like, you got to be like 5'9" or something. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like 5'6".
We're like, no, we think you're like, we were making her taller by the minute.
I feel like this huge giant. Like literally, that's how I was feeling in that moment.
Sorry.
You made me feel like that, Lorraine.
I'm so sorry.
But no, those are like, so that's why I asked you the question, do you think insecurities can play a part in feeling lonely?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it plays a big role. I absolutely think it plays a big role. Like I've said before, I'm biracial, right? I had a black mother, white father, but I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, right? And if you weren't black in my neighborhood, you were Hispanic, okay? Now I look more like a Hispanic than I look black, obviously, but I didn't relate because I'm looking at my mother, a beautiful brown ebony skin woman, and I don't look like her. My sisters were a little bit darker than me, and the kids didn't really accept me growing up. Right. And I always would try to fit in to being and showing my blackness. Like I was like, I'm black. So when they kind of like ostracized me and made fun of me, then I would try to cling to the Hispanic because at least I looked more like them. But then, you know, I don't know their language. I didn't know their music. And so I didn't feel like I fit in there. And so there was loneliness in that where I was like this kid just climbing a tree. I would literally climb the tree and sit on the top of the tree like I don't belong anywhere. And yes, it created an incredible amount of insecurities that even when I got older, I had a hard time embracing my beauty, embracing that this is what I look like. So when all of a sudden my look became exotic, right? All of a sudden it was like a trend to be dark hair, dark eye, and curvy. And what are you? And more mixed children were being born. Then all of a sudden it was like, but you're beautiful, you're this. And I had a very hard time really equating beauty to what I look like. And it was a lonely space for a long time. And it took me time to feel, and I still struggle with it. Like there are times when if we go to we went to a thing yesterday, it was a black owned business. And we love to go and support those type of businesses, Carmen and I. And I'm like the lightest skinned woman here. And most of these people don't know I'm black. And I, in my mind, am like feeling Like I always feel like I have to go out of my way to prove
Diversity
it.
and inclusion, girl.
Yeah, but it can feel lonely, right?
yeah.
But just having to tap in and say, Lorraine, it's all good. No one's even thinking about you when you walk into this room. But anyways, I'm rambling, but yeah.
I grew up the same way with that.
I did too. When I moved out here from New York, being Puerto Rican, I think I shared the story with you guys before. You have the whole gang thing here. We didn't have in New York, so I had to learn really quick what red and blue meant, and what
She had to see
cholo,
what sex she was
chola
gonna be a
meant,
part
all
of.
that. So I'm in high
What sex
school.
you claim,
Yeah,
Charlie?
where am I at? I'm like, do I
Just
hang out with them? Do I hang out? So I hung out with everybody, but I never really felt like I fit into just one. And I still feel that, and I love that about me. I had to learn that. Before I was like, okay, I'm in a new place. This is what, do I dress like that? Am I supposed to wear eyeliner like this? My bangs up like this? Or do I wear, whatever? So I was learning as a child, as a teenager, you're very impressionable too. You want to figure things out. And so that was a challenge for me.
I think that's a big part of of loneliness is fitting in.
Yeah.
When we talk about social loneliness, right? I think a lot of young people experience that. And this is something that I really feel like, and I know a lot of people feel this way, that needs to be addressed because of the increase in suicide amongst young people. But I think a lot of it has to do with really feeling like they don't fit in anywhere. And again, we're innately tribal. It's who we are as people, and connection is everything to us. Whether we find a negative way or a positive way to do it, we're always looking for some way to connect. And when we don't feel connected to something, it is lonely. It's a lonely feeling. You were gonna say?
Yeah, I have a child that is extremely introvert, and she has expressed, she not really said the word lonely, but nobody can relate to her because she's very eccentric. And I love that about her. So I'm very cautious of how I talk to her and let her be who she is and let her know it's great to be who she is. But as a parent with, kids have so much access to everything on their phones, and they spend a lot of time alone. Kids spend a lot of time alone. And this is just a message for parents, because I get it. Pay attention to your kids and what they're doing on their phones and who they are. Let them be who they want to be. Because my daughter, we have tried to make her fit in, and the word I'm using, fit in, and she is who she is. Why does she need to fit into what we think she needs to fit into? She doesn't like hanging around a lot of people. And she's expressed, that she just feels like people, don't get her. So, I try to do the best as a parent and try to understand. And it seems like she's better, and she comes out of her room more often. So I guess this is just a message to parents for children, because they feel lonely too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially because when we're as adults and we're going through things in our lives, we sometimes forget to check in with the experience that the child is having, right? So whether like for example, with going through divorce, or where my son, living with a teenage mother. I was a teenage mom and living in separate households. He had weekends with dad and home with mom, and never really tapping in and then seeing what that experience meant to him could have made him feel lonely, And so it's a good point to bring up, and it'd actually be a great show altogether. So I want to talk now. Let's go into the healing part of it. What is the mindset of loneliness, and how do we overcome it? Because it's not, listen, I'm not here to say it's an easy feat. The loneliness is a real thing, and it's easy to say, do this, do this, do this. And it's easier said than done. But here are some things that you can do in order to try to combat this feeling of loneliness. So how do we combat it? One of the things is become friends with self first. I feel like this is super, super important. It's like you're not alone because you have self. It's like there's me, myself, and I in a room. So there's at least three people, right? And really tapping in, because I feel like loneliness, and I have to speak for myself personally because I can't speak for others, is a lack of, or a feeling like I'm missing something. So I'm being so external about it. There's something that I'm missing that makes me feel alone. But if I can see that I have self and enjoy the little things, as an example, instead of taking a shower, maybe I'll take a nice bubble bath and I'll just enjoy that time with self, What are the things that I like to do that require it to be done just with me? Maybe it's a bike ride. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe there's a time to pray and meditate, but there's things that I can do that's an act of self-love that says, I feel lonely, but the reality is I'm just alone. But what fun thing or what thing can I do for self in this space of being alone? I can sit and wallow.
I get massages.
And sad and feel, sorry for myself or feel alone. Or I can say, no, I'm going to be proactive and I'm going to get up and I'm going to try to make a recipe that I really want to cook. Or there's things that we can do that we love, maybe paint a picture, but something that is required in isolation to do anyway, and really start to be your friend with yourself. You were going to say?
I like to go on a hike. I'll go by hikes by myself. But I always have these conversations with myself that I like to do. And if I'm in a pity party, and I'll talk to myself as if I was talking to you. I'll be like, girl, if you don't stop, did you forget who you were? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. I love having myself talk. And I'll talk out loud to myself. Sounds crazy, but I do.
No, it doesn't. I do it all the time.
And then I'm like, okay, it's like, you have to be your own friend sometimes because you get you better than anybody gets you.
Right.
So.
And we have multiple parts. So sometimes this part has to talk to that part and, come together. But yeah.
And let it be an opportunity as opposed to an opposition. I'm at this stage in my life, I am literally, let's say, alone, right? I don't have a partner or a romantic person, or my friendships are changing, right? There's been times when I've shifted my life, making different choices for my life, which required me to spend some time alone, because it means I had to kind of do some inventory of the people around me and shifting and not feeling connected to the old self, which means I wasn't connecting to the people and the conversations I used to have. And so in order for me to figure out that next thing, I needed to embrace the loneliness and say, this is a good space for me to really hear myself and see what it is I actually am wanting and what it is I think that I'm lacking, right? So I want to go to the second one, which is showing compassion. This has been, for me, a big thing for me during loneliness. And I have been very intentional about this. There has been times in my life, for different reasons throughout my life, where I felt really alone. And I always had people around me, but just feeling alone and just getting into really dark depressions where I didn't want to get out. But I had people call me and say, hey, let's go out. Let's go do this. So it's not even like I didn't have a circle of people, but just not wanting to get out of bed and telling myself, I'm going to die this way. And I can't do that. It was just so dark. And my biggest thing was showing compassion. So if that meant that day I just got out of bed and I went to the store, I was intentional about saying something nice or kind to someone while I was out, or just smiling at somebody, just being bigger than myself. I don't feel like this, but let me try to do something nice for someone else, and being compassionate. And even in that moment, it would just give me a little bit of light. It would just kind of expand me. I wouldn't feel so sucked in. And I think showing compassion when you are feeling alone means that you're contributing to someone else outside of you. So you're making the issue bigger than self. And I think it's incredibly healing.
They say when you're hurting, help others. That for that same reason, it's an exchange. You're giving, even though you're in pain, you're helping others that are in pain too, or volunteer or do whatever that is for that. I speak to God a lot when I'm feeling that way. I walk and I pray and I'm like, Lord, help me out of this, whatever it is I need to say at that time. But I do know that movement helps me. I don't sit down for a long time anyway. So when I'm down, it's no surprise I don't sit down either, but I find things to get busy with that feel good. And sometimes that's what's hard. What feels good? What can I do movement wise that's going to make me feel, and if it doesn't right now, how much do I need to do to change my state and to change my emotional place? It wasn't always like that, but I've learned that now. But I'll tell you what, man, when you pray and you lean on that faith of yours, that's who answers back in whatever ways. And that's where discernment comes from me.
I'm going to say something really just super candid, because I'm a woman of faith, right? But I can tell you in true candor that there are times in my loneliness I'll pray. I've, asked God, but I need a human being sometimes.
For sure.
I just I can be in a quiet space, and I would watch my mother do this, right? She's a praying, God-fearing, God-abiding woman. She really loves God like I do. But she gets into isolation in her faith. Like she will literally get into a space and just Bible sermons, Bible sermons, Bible sermons. And I think it's a beautiful thing, but she won't step out into community.
That's a big
And
piece.
I have felt like that in my loneliness sometimes. Like, God, where are you? Why aren't you helping me? Why isn't there an answer? I need to hear something. Give me a message that is tangible. And I get like that sometimes. So I believe in it, but I do want to speak to that because I think a lot of people who are faith driven can get frustrated and feel lonely even within their faith because they're not getting what they feel like
In
they
that
need.
moment.
Right. So it's like what you said. It's like having the faith, having the prayer, but stepping out into that and getting into community with people. You need human contact with people.
Absolutely. Doing stuff like this, coaching people, counseling, helping people, whatever that is, it does fill our own spirit. I mean, there is a selfishness to what we do, and it's a good thing. It's not a bad, it's good for us. We need each other. So if I have something I want to share that I feel will help, I hope it does to someone and the same in return.
Well, they say the biggest way to help with human needs, right? Tony Robbins talks about this all the time. The 6 human needs is growth and contribution. So when you put yourself in a space where you're growing, so if you're feeling alone and you're feeling lonely, put yourself in a space where you can learn and grow, because that expands you. Contribution is expansion. You got to look for things that when you put it in you mentally and emotionally, it makes you feel expanded and not retracted. Let's go to the next one. Find your tribe, right? And this one is kind of circling back or it kind of segues into what I was saying about your connection with people. Finding your tribe is not easy. I'm going to say that straight up. When I have made intentional decision to level up my life, I know that it's required for me to surround myself with people who are going to level me up. The challenge with that sometimes is that level up people are going to challenge what you know. They're going to make you feel uncomfortable. And if they're really good level up people, they're going to make you question self in a good way, even though it's uncomfortable. And when you're trying to find your tribe in the space that you are looking to be in, it's not as easy of a task because you almost sometimes don't even know exactly what it is you're looking for because you're only used to this type of tribe. So I'm ready to level up, or I'm ready to get out of this loneliness, or I'm ready for this or that, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. But now I need to find a tribe of people. So what do you ladies think about finding your tribe, and how do people find their tribe?
I think sometimes we get so attached to people that need to be let go that we don't let them go because they're toxic to us. So that would be a good start, doing inventory on your tribe as it stands and make changes that need, if you want to be more successful or have sometimes your friends can make you feel lonely. I don't know if you can relate to that, but where I've had friends in my life that I'm one of those people that cling to people and I can't let them go. And that's why I think I can get over things fast because I deal with so much while I'm going through a situation. I don't know how to cut off people. I've been cut off several times and that wasn't even the question, but I think it goes with it.
That's okay.
So I've been cut off several times and the loneliness I experienced while we were still friends, not understanding what the disconnects were and stuff like that. But as I'm older, the people I want to surround myself with are people that I can learn from, that I enjoy thoroughly, that they enjoy me. I can be who I am. I only want to be around people like that. I don't want anybody that is going to make me feel bad or less than. So I try to be intentional about people that I really call friends. I have a lot of associates that really come in my circle because I always I don't ever want to get in a space of where people make me feel some type of way bad. Especially friendships. And
I think when we circle back to the specific topic of loneliness and finding your tribe, and I'm going to go back to the first thing of becoming friends with yourself first. I think when you can start to identify with self and spend a little bit of time with yourself and learn to do things with self, then you kind of get what you like and enjoy. Then you go and now we have things that are available to us, right? We can use social media as an advantage or a disadvantage, right? And so it's like, okay, I've been spending some time with myself. I've been feeling alone. So let me first get comfortable with being alone. and turn this into a positive as opposed to a negative. And these are the things that I enjoy with self: reading books, maybe hiking. Now maybe the next thing is like, now I know I love hiking or I really love reading. Let me look for groups that read. Let me look for a group of people that enjoy hiking or whatever that thing may be, and find your tribe in the thing that you found with self that you really enjoyed. I think that that's a good way to really start and do it with no expectation. Because also, too, I think a lot of our loneliness attributes to expectations, which has created disappointments in our lives. So it's like, I'm going to find this tribe, and everybody in the tribe doesn't have to like me. I'm going to find this group, and I'm not going to click with everybody just because I like to hike. That person may be vegan and I love meat. Like, there may be other variables, but just go in there saying, this is me being proactive with my life. I have no expectations, but I want to be around people who like to hike. As an example. Yeah, you were going to say something,
No,
Sharlene?
when you show up that way, the people will come. I mean, that's just that reciprocity of energy. Like, that's just it. The yin and the yang, whoever you are, you'll attract. And as we want to become that or get closer to whatever that is that makes us feel a certain kind of way, that'll show up. I believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also truly believe that it is quality over quantity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our tribe does not have to be a large, significant population of people. I enjoy, like, just the three of us. When we go do things, just the three of us. Like, I don't need a plethora of girlfriends. I just need a few quality girlfriends that I don't have to be 100% always in their lives. They don't always have to be in my life, that we can go live our lives, pick up where we left off. Maybe I have a really good friend that I've known for years, and she has a family. She has 6 kids. She has a husband. She lives in another state. I don't talk to her every day. Sometimes we go months without speaking, but when we talk, we pick up where we left off. And so I think that we also need to identify when we have our tribe, they can't be our crutches. They just have to be your go-tos and people where their likes and interests when you are feeling lonely. Like, am I lonely today or am I just bored? Let me call the tribe. Let me go on a hike, tapping in and really checking in with what it is, And I think there's one more. Keeping in mind that there is no perfect friend or partner. I think, again, when we're talking about a lot of us feeling lonely, especially you see it sometimes when people get older and they've had maybe a lot of heartbreak in their lives, or people really betray them, or they've just been really hurt people. They're lonely, but that's because they don't trust anymore, right? And so thinking no one's ever going to be good for me, or everyone's the same way, or you can't trust anyone, and getting in that because you've been so hurt, you almost like keep yourself in loneliness trying to find that perfect person. Unless they're this, and then you have a whole list, and you're never going to get the perfect person, just like you're never going to be the perfect person. And it doesn't mean if you're not the perfect partner or the perfect friend that all of a sudden the relationships have to end or dissolve. You just have to get comfortable saying, when I'm finding my tribe, when I'm finding my people, we're all multifaceted. So there's going to be some things we like, some things we don't like. And again, loneliness sometimes is feeling like we're never going to find that perfect friend or partner. And so we keep ourselves alone because of that. You guys are,
Yeah, no,
I was in my own thoughts. I'm gonna keep
okay, well, let's hear it.
No, I mean,
as much as you want to share.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess I said something, okay? Because I got people. I should just drop the mic.
I was like, girl, keep on. Yep.
Well, because it's true. But
no, I just had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was like, I'm not going to be perfect for you. Like, don't try to put me in this perfect, like, you did this, you did this, you did it, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And I'm like, I'm not trying to fit in your box.
I don't want to be perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
But perfection, when people are looking for perfection, they're really just looking for protection.
Absolutely.
What they're doing is they're like, I have been hurt. I have been damaged. Someone has betrayed me. I had expectations, right? And those expectations were not met. And now I'm hurt and disappointed, and I shrink just a little bit. And so now I'm going to start to create this laundry list of what a person has to be for my life in order for them to enter. And then they say, I'm alone.
Yep.
I can't find anybody. I'm alone. And it's like, no, you have to, like, we talked about the expectation and standard. You got to raise up and level up who you are. Be those things for yourself and be graceful with self so you can allow certain people to be in your life without it having to be a perfect situation. You cannot control whether or not you're going to be hurt, but but you can control whether or not your powerlessness in that. So,
And work on your picker to determine what's a red flag versus an expectation.
Right.
Because I think sometimes people see false, disappointment as a red flag when really they're creating that in their own minds of what they expect from somebody else. So that might be a topic to think about.
Oh, for sure.
Red flag versus an expectation of
It
others.
should be called the picker.
The picker, yeah.
Oh, that would be
the
first
topic
lipstick
today is
ladies.
the picker.
Is your picker off?
Yes.
I love it.
So, ladies, how do we want to conclude? What do we want to say to people out there who are dealing with loneliness? Because it is a real thing for people.
It is. It's a tough one, too. We can say all that we want, and every one of us is practicing every day what that is. That helps each of us be the better person that we want to be. And we all start from somewhere. Loneliness, again, I guess learn about yourself and what fuels you. For me, I love people. I love to be around people. But when I really need good quality people, to Lorraine's point, there's a selective few that I choose to want to be around. But again, I feel like I heal myself when I help others. That's just kind of the exchange I have, because it helps me put perspective in my own self by removing my selfishness of my feelings and giving it to others. And that's something that I've learned to do. Doesn't mean it works for everyone, but it's an exchange that I feel helps me go through things in a different way.
I lost my whole train of thought because I was like, that's really good. I think I need to, I like the giving. I think I'm a giving person, but I think intentionally giving an exchange to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You are.
You are too.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Such an insight
bunch of
thing.
sweetness over here. Look
It's
at that,
such an insight thing. But
But I'm sorry, continue.
I forgot what I was going to say. But loneliness, finding that friend in yourself, like really what I like to do. What do I like? What do I need? How do I like to contribute to people and to the world? How, like, really knowing yourself in that way and not trying to project your needs on somebody else. Like, be able to fulfill your own needs in your life.
Give yourself permission to do that too.
And give yourself grace. And
Yes.
it's okay to feel alone sometimes. It's okay to feel lonely, but don't get stuck in that. Depression and loneliness go together, and that needs clinical help. But if you're just feeling lonely, like, really tap into self and do something that you love to do.
To your point, and I hear this often, I hear oftentimes people don't allow themselves to feel a certain kind of way because they're afraid to get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that there's that, I don't want to go there because I might get stuck. There's that learning of yourself and trusting that that's a moment pass through, not a forever destination.
I would suggest give yourself a time limit. Like, if you are feeling some type of way, you have to deal with that feeling. You have to deal with being hurt or angry or sad or lonely, but intentional time frame. If I'm going to feel like that today, wake up the next day and say, I can't feel like that today. Or even if you do, give yourself a little more time, but be aware of the time you're spending in it. That would be my advice for that.
I think, again, I feel like loneliness is defined by how we, like, alone versus loneliness, right? It's all how we define it and what it means to us. And I think that if you allow life to lend you the space that you're in, then you can ask your life the questions. And I think that when we are feeling alone or we're feeling lonely, we can be always external about what we're thinking and feeling and seeing it from, I'm lonely because of what's externally happening to me. And that may be real and true to you. But I think that sometimes we just have to ask ourselves the question, okay, I am lonely. I feel alone. What is it that I'm missing or I feel that I need that makes me feel this way? And what can I do? Not what everybody else, not having this, not getting this, but what can I do, little or big, to give me just a little bit of something that tells me I'm not alone? Because we have to change the narratives in our mind. We have to change the story. Something happened to you that makes you tell the story of loneliness. And it's about, the loneliness is a symptom. I talked about it in the workshop. Your loneliness is a symptom. But what is the real problem? And take the opportunity of that loneliness to ask the questions for your life, to ask yourself, where does this loneliness actually come from? And it can be uncomfortable, but sometimes when you can hear that inner voice, that small child talking to you about loneliness, you can somewhat seek an antidote for yourself.
I think emotions are also a discovery to self too. When we feel certain things, it's telling ourselves that we need to go through it to learn something else about who we are, or what we need to, visit again. So that's a good point.
And don't make loneliness your companion.
No.
It can feel very safe, even though it hurts and it feels sad and you feel whatever at times. You can also feel safe in that. And know that you need people. Every one of us needs a connection to something and someone, and often something greater than ourselves. And even if it's not people, the contribution, the growth, find something greater than self and step out of that. Do not let loneliness be your companion. I think it's a killer.
Yes.
It's a killer.
For sure.
So anyways, thank you, ladies. Thank you all out there for watching another episode of The Mindsetters. If you are dealing with loneliness and it has gotten to a point of depression and you're having suicidal ideations, please seek help. If you want, reach out to any one of us. We'll send you resources, but do not spend your life alone and depressed. You are deserving of such a better life, and you are not alone. There's a lot of people in their loneliness that can relate to you. So find your tribe and find your peace. And until next time, thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.